the name of your movie itself. We saw it in Sitges, and it was called Possessor, Uncut. And we were wondering if you chose that name because you were planning to trim it as you did with antiviral, or if you were expecting maybe some kind of censorship on it.
So it's called Possessor Uncut because of the release in the United States. The Possessor Uncut is the full unrated director's cut there, but there is a version that's been cut for an R rating that will be released on some platforms.
And about the name of your main role, I was wondering if it had any meaning, because I think it was Vanessa Geist in your previous movie. Her surname was Geist, which means ghost in German. So I was wondering if there was some connection or there was any meaning behind the name of Tasia Voss.
No, not really. It was just a melodic thing. I just sometimes pick a name because I like the sound of it and how it works in the dialogue.
I have to say, we saw that video which you sent to Sitges to say thank you for your work. Congratulations again, by the way.
Thank you so much.
And I found it so funny, but at the same time, it was creepy, you know? It was quite creepy. Are you planning to make any merchandising with that mask? Or is it a mask existed? Did you design it for the movie?
It was designed for the movie. It was sculpted by Dan Martin and his team. Dan Martin was our lead effects artist, and so yeah, it was his design. It was made specifically for the film and based around Andrea Riseborough's face. I would love it to be manufactured and be a product, but
yeah,
I don't think I get to decide that. If anyone wants to do it, I would love that.
Well, if there is any Halloween after all, if there is any, you know, they are celebrating Halloween in Spain now too. I mean, it's become, I'm still shocked, but it has become popular here too. So if there is any Halloween, it would be cool, a cool disguise to wear. So I leave it there. Maybe you can. I don't know if it was your intention, but you know, there might be business behind that. Right. Okay. Did you expect to win the Sitges Award? I mean, you got the best director and best movie, so you got two awards. So, did you expect to receive this? Did you expect your movie to be received like that, or
no? I mean, first of all, I never expect to win anything, and secondly, I think I think that's true in general of festivals. You know, it's so much to do with personal taste of the jury, and it's so much to do with there's so many elements at play. You can never go in expecting to win anything because you'll just drive yourself crazy. But I, in particular, never expect to win anything.
Well, you should start doing it. I mean, there is quality. there is such a quality in your work. I mean, I'm not trying to be flattering, but man, you have to know what you do.
That's very kind of you. But
so, did you know the work of your, let's say, rivals?
Well, no. I mean, the problem with releasing a film in a pandemic is that you don't get to travel with it. So I wasn't able to be at the festival, and I wasn't able to watch other films, and so it's an interesting experience because I don't really feel like I'm releasing a movie. It's all very surreal and very removed. With Antiviral, I was able to come to the festival, and it was such a wonderful atmosphere and really exciting and welcoming, and you know, it's sort of one of the best festivals. I mean, especially obviously it's a significant festival for genre filmmaking, but also just I think because it's a genre festival, the atmosphere there is so wonderful. But sadly, in a pandemic, you're so removed from those things, and so you kind of you don't know who else is there. You're not meeting the other filmmakers. You're not seeing the other films. And
yeah, it's quite strange. It is. And didn't you have the chance to see them online, maybe?
I don't know if they were online. I honestly, the other thing is that because I'm in the middle of the release, it's been a lot of press and it's been a kind of whirlwind. So
I wanted to ask you that. I wanted to ask you if you were working on anything right now.
Oh, sure. Yeah. You mean other films?
Yeah. Are you filming anything? Are you shooting, or are you writing?
So I have two other films that are sort of close to being able to happen. One is called Infinity Pool, which is a kind of tourist resort satire with some science fiction elements, and the other one is called Dragon, which is like a hallucinatory space horror movie. And both are close to happening, and I hope to be able to make them soon. It's a little bit hard with the pandemic because it's depending on where you shoot and depending on the state of, the viral landscape at a particular time, your ability to shoot might be limited. So I don't know what our shooting schedule is yet, but hopefully I'll be able to.
I guess there are restrictions on the amount of people you can gather and so on, isn't it? Yeah,
and I know people who are shooting in Canada and various cities, and they say it's interesting. It's a little bit difficult because you have to take precautions, and it can be, it's hard. Filmmaking is such a social, collaborative art form, and it's really, so much of it is in people interacting and sitting in a room, and really, so I don't know. I would certainly try if I got the chance, but I think it must really affect the kinds of films that are happening right now, because the whole team is divided into different bubbles. You have to be really careful to not.
Do you think this might mean the end of romance and porn shootings?
Well, I don't. It's an interesting question, because that suddenly becomes very difficult. I'm not sure what the regulations are right now. I mean, the other thing is that if you just have two actors in a room talking to each other, they're already at risk. So I don't know, does a sex scene, is it that much more risky than just two people for hours and hours in a room talking close to each other?
I guess they might have asked you this around, because, you filmed Antiviral, and now we are in the middle of a pandemic, and there is this conspiracy around the virus, the coronavirus, which is asking to see Antiviral and to talk about how there could be pharmacies, etc., exploiting it and so on. What's your vision around all this phenomenon, of this conspiracy around the coronavirus?
I'm honestly not much of a conspiracy theorist, even though an Antiviral is not such a conspiracy film. I mean, the thing is, some people have said it would be a good time to release Antiviral because of the pandemic, but I wonder if it is, because the thing is, in a virus film, the virus usually stands in for something else. In horror, the horror always stands in for something else. But because we're dealing with the pandemic in a day-to-day way, it's hard not to take those things literally. We're all having this very straightforward relationship with the same virus. So I don't know, a virus movie where the virus is a metaphor might not work right now. It's almost like you need to make a movie about something else to talk about the virus.
I wasn't calling Antiviral a conspiracy movie, because in fact, it is obvious it's about much more. It's more around all this behavior around celebrities and so on. But I was reviewing it, and I realized you were talking about all that copywriting on the viruses and so on. And it came to my mind that you might have seen some funny reactions in coronavirus times that maybe made you think about your own movie. You mentioned the subtext, so that could be nice to connect with the subtext of Possessor. I was wondering if you meant to talk about some kind of toxic masculinities, because there is this relation between the father-in-law and the son-in-law. And on the other hand, well, we'll talk about that behavior the protagonist has, which is quite aggressive, quite sadistic, and it could be more related to this kind of toxic masculinity.
Right. I mean, I wasn't targeting toxic masculinity specifically, although there are elements of that in the film, but I think to me, I mean, in a sense, both Voss and Colin are, for different reasons, in these kinds of, I guess, domestic contexts that they find to be completely oppressive and against their characters. In Colin's case, it's a bit more of a kind of insecurity, and he can't operate in that context for some reason, and in a sense is building characters for himself. And in Voss's case, it's a very different reason, because she has this, her work and her relationship with violence and sort of who she is doesn't really operate in a kind of conventional, civilized domestic context. And so to her, that thing that we're meant to like and find comforting is actually very oppressive, because it's sort of against her character.
Yeah. So okay, I see. So it's more about people in our routine who are kind of breaks for our profession or our desires. Another interpretation we made when we analyzed the movie, which was that maybe she felt more comfortable in a masculine identity, in a masculine body. So it's not so attached to transgender, okay, to this transition of gender.
I mean, it's interesting. This is the thing, because although I had specific ideas in terms of both the interpretation and the narrative of the film, the execution was designed to leave it somewhat open. And so I don't want to get too into interpreting it or to putting to having a deep conversation about my own interpretations yet. Like,
okay.
I'm happy to do it, but no, it's just, I mean, the thing is, what I would love the most is for people to discuss the film and to disagree about it and to come up with things that I wasn't intending, and to have, and I feel like if I talk too much about my own intentions, it sort of precludes the possibility of that. I almost want to have this discussion 2 years from now, once
okay.
Time. Because everything you're saying is incredibly interesting, and it's a valid interpretation completely.
Thank you.
And so it's sort of, I don't want to say that that's not in it also, because there are elements of it there for sure, and I think what you're saying is completely valid. At the same time, a film becomes its own sort of life form and goes off into the world, and
that's what I was going to tell you, that maybe it means that everyone is making it of his or her own. It's like you are living the movie when you start interpreting, or you see maybe part of what you see in your context, or what is being debated in your context. So sure. I don't think you're going to ruin it for me. I mean,
no. But I guess what I mean is, with some movies, there's the filmmaker has a particular intention, and that's really, it's important that in a very detailed way that's communicated clearly, because if it isn't, then the film has failed. But I like the kind of filmmaking where there's space for creativity on the part of the audience, and so I still think going into a film like that, you have to have a very specific idea of what you mean. I think it's important to have it be coherent narratively and in terms of the meaning. But I like films where the filmmaker doesn't spell it out so much, and so some of the world is suggested, some of the meaning is suggested, and it leaves a bit of space for discourse, and it leaves a bit of space for audience interpretation, and that was definitely in the execution what I was intending, even if in sort of writing it and coming up with it, I had a particular structure in mind. So I'd rather leave it to you to come up with stuff and not say this is exactly what I meant and it has to be this. I mean, maybe, again, in 2 years from now, sure, but for now, I really like I like when people come up with things on their own, and some people have come up with completely fascinating things. Some people have come up with very insane things. A lot of people sort of have understood what I was going for, but didn't assume that they understood what I was going for, because it's a bit deliberately sort of vague in certain parts. But
we were talking about this similarities, these connections you make, which are so Freud-like, between penetration and the aggression and sexuality, okay? So the penis and the knife. And I asked you if you were into Freud, or are you reading psychologies? Do you frequently read that, apart from sci-fi?
To a certain degree. I mean, I like Freud, but I'm not, I haven't gone very deep into Freud, and I don't think, he's sort of, from everything I've read, I feel like he's a sort of brilliant guy who isn't necessarily right about anything, but is like incredibly incredibly interesting. And so it wasn't really intended as a kind of Freudian penis knife thing exactly. I mean, certainly to a certain extent, sure, yes, it's in the initial sex scene, and there's a kind of eroticizing of the penetration of the knife, and so it's not that none of that's there, but it wasn't intended to be, the knife isn't the penis that she wants to have or anything like that.
Okay. About photography and this, well, I have to say, I like how you communicate this transfer from body to body. The same way I really enjoyed. I think it's so personal of yours. I think it's, we could say it's like your seal, your stomp, okay? How you communicate these transformations or these hallucinations you showed in Antiviral by means of oniric images, like they look like video clips, and you were actually into video clips before. And well, I think it's kind of an absurd question, but how did you get these images? I mean, they are so powerful. Do they come from dreams, or do you were you, I don't know, making any tribute to any artist?
To be honest, it's kind of an experimental process that I engage with some of my close collaborators. It's interesting that you say they're like video clips. We do sort of, in a sense, treat them like these isolated music videos or something, because when I write those scenes, it's a sort of short paragraph that's very abstract. It says, okay, it's nightmare imagery, image distorts, pulses, whatever, but that's sort of code for me and, say Kareem Hussein, my cinematographer, or Dan Martin, the effects artist, to say, okay, we're going to find this through a process of exploring and through experimentation. So all of those scenes are completely practical. There's no CGI. It's all in-camera practical effects.
Wow.
And yeah, and it's through, we came to that stuff through this sort of experimental process. So for instance, with Kareem, he's a very close friend of mine, and he lived actually just down the street from me for a lot of development, and we had years of experimenting. So we would just go to his living room where he has a projector and cameras, and experiment with video feedback and various lenses and gels and ways to distort the image. And what's great about working practically is that you have these sort of happy accidents, and so you try one thing and it doesn't work, but it suggests something else, and then you play with this other thing, and so we developed this sort of storehouse of camera trickery, and then brought Dan Martin on, and we talked about the stuff, the ideas that I had, but also any ideas that he had that he wanted to try. It was this sort of, again, a long collaborative process to create this imagery. And then once we have a lot of these images shot, then Matt Hannum, my editor, and I worked very closely on the kind of visual cutting language, how that would work, and Matt helped to develop.
No CGI, that's amazing. I mean, I have to say, I feel really curious about everything which is keeping CGI away. I find it much more interesting. It's, I think it's a much more creative work. I'm not removing any merit to the ones who are really good at CGI, but I know, I think it's more playful, isn't it? I feel like a child when I see things like that. It's like, yeah, you can do it without computers. It's amazing.
Yeah, and it has this sort of texture to it, and this kind of, I'm the same. It's not that I hate CGI. It's a totally valid way to work, but there's a tactile quality to practical effects that I really like. And then again, it's that process. You can have those happy accidents when you have your hands there, when you're just like, a lot of the color in the film, that sort of two-tone color was just me next to the camera with a flashlight and a gel making. And
you're a painter, aren't you? Or you've been a painter?
A little bit. I was never very good at painting. So I did some ink drawings and stuff, and I was trying to be a bit of an illustrator, but
no. Have you ever made or started any kind of comic book to try to release it?
No, I was never good at tracking the same character from panel to panel, so I didn't do comics, but I did. I had a few illustrations released in a couple of books, nothing big, and a few art shows. But I was never a very serious or successful illustrator. It was always just something I enjoyed.
So thank you very much for your patience. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Okay. Bye.
Good luck, and I hope you get all your projects financed and we can see them soon. Okay.
Oh, thank you so much.
Thank you from La Ciclotimia too. Bye-bye.
Okay.
Thanks.
Thank you. Bye.